Germaine Greer, thank you very much for joining us.
A pleasure.
You write in your essay that about 1 in 5 women will be victims of sexual assault over the course of their lives. That rate is at sharp odds with the paltry rate of conviction. Why is that?
Well, there are lots of reasons why that's the case. One is that women are loath to complain to the authorities. Another is that the actual burden of proof is too difficult. It's the issue of consent. And the thing is that a woman can plead that she did not consent, and the jury, supposing she's got one, can believe her. But if they also believe that the defendant, i.e. the accused man, was convinced or that she did consent, then they can't find him guilty. They can't find him guilty even if they doubt that he was telling the truth. If there is a possibility that he did in fact believe she was consenting, then if they find him guilty, it's a mistrial.
Is the problem that the law is unclear about what consent is, or is it just impossible to clearly define consent itself?
Well, nobody does define it, and it is pretty difficult. If you are, say for example, you know of somebody who endures sex she doesn't want with her partner because if she doesn't, he will be in a bad mood all day, and she's anxious about their relationship and about the children having a father and so on. So she endures sex she doesn't particularly want, and that she hasn't actually initiated and that she can't actually control. But that's her life, and that's what she appears to have accepted. To decide that you're going to go down to the police station and say, my husband climbs on me night after night without working out whether I am interested or not, they're not going to leap to bring a case against him. But the view now is that all non-consensual sex is rape. And that, as far as I'm concerned, that's practically impossible to implement. You would never be able to get it done. You have to ask yourself, why do so many women fake orgasm? What's that about? The figures are hopeless, they're as soft as butter. But people say 46% of women fake orgasm every time they have sex. Got to think about that.
But don't you minimise the horror of a violent rape by a stranger by discussing it in the same context as marital sex, where a woman goes along with it even if she doesn't feel like it?
No, I don't think I am, really. Stranger rape is very rare. There are very seldom injuries reported. I mean, a penis is nowhere near as dangerous as a gun, or even a knife, or even a fist, or a broomstick, or a bottle. We've over-dramatised the offence committed by the penis and under-emphasised the element of violence. I mean, a violent assault, you don't have to say you consented. Someone punches you in the face, you don't have to say you're not asked, did you consent to being punched in the face?
But surely a violent assault by a stranger, a penis usually would not be the only weapon. There would probably be fists and some form of, restraint involved. Surely an attack like that shatters your sense of security in the world, your privacy, your basic social contract that you have a right to safety that, say, neglect from a loved one or faking an orgasm does not.
I think actually being used without consideration, without care, without conversation, without love, without tenderness for years on end is much more damaging than a sudden encounter with someone who has nothing to do with you. It's like being run over by a bus. It's lamentable, but it's not, you don't have to internalise it. You don't have to say, somehow I brought this on myself. But if it is within the context of your family life and your married life, then you do have to wear it.
In rape cases that come before courts, as you mentioned, the question of consent is often central. The modern mantra goes something like, consent should not be the absence of no, but rather the clear presence of yes. What do you think of that?
Well, it's a bit hopeless, because you can have the presence of yes when you start out on a sexual encounter, and decide in the middle that it's very definitely no. For example, at the moment you can get an app for your phone in which you can record your consent, so it's a fact, it's there in your phone. The only thing is, if you change your mind in the middle, you've got to find your phone, and you better hope that it's still got a signal, and you better hope that it's still got some juice. It's madness. We don't really know what consent is. If you talk to a woman who's given in circumstances where she didn't want her little girl to be woken up, for example, and see her mother fighting with someone who appears to want to do something horrible to her, if you actually grit your teeth and go through with it, you haven't consented. You've given in, which is not the same thing at all.
Since the 1970s and 80s, developed countries have made efforts to give victims of sexual violence a better possibility of redress. But the experience of going to the police, of going to court, is still extremely traumatic. Why has better progress not been made into this?
Because really there's a historic reason for that. If you think about it, rape is a peculiar word. It actually describes the action of stealing something, of taking it away from somebody who owns it. What is taken away is a woman, and she is taken away from the men in her family. Now, we are very used to the word patriarchal, but I'm not sure that we understand what it means. When you go to a police station to say that you have been sexually abused, you are actually asking a patriarchal authority to intervene on your behalf. What will happen then is that you are not a party to the action. You might be in Belgium, where women are a party to these actions, but elsewhere in the world you are a piece of evidence, and they're going to test you to the utmost. In the most shocking example here of 4 rugby players who abused a young woman, she was in the dock, not in the dock, as she was being questioned for 8 days. Each one of 4 QCs questioned her for 2 days. Now that was thought by the public to be outrageous, but it was their duty as representatives of the accused men in the dock, who still have their civil liberties. And if we were to remove them in such a case, this would be stepping away from habeas corpus, it would be stepping away from everything that matters to us in our culture of civil liberties and free speech and so forth.
Does that mean there's really no way that we can make things better for women who come forward about these crimes?
Just about. Under the current system, where we have a patriarchal authority that is acting on behalf of the state, there is another option, which is that offended women can bring a case against their abuser for damages. But this is tricky. You've got to hire a lawyer for one thing, and you've got to prove damages, that you were affected by what happened in a way that affected the rest of your life, say. You are also liable to endure a counterclaim which says that you encouraged what happened, that accuses you of contributory negligence. Then even if you win your case, and there have been a couple of cases where they have been won, one of them involves a man involved in the current Me Too go-round in America. And he had the courage to go ahead, and presumably the resources to go ahead, because most women don't have the resources to hire a decent lawyer. So you can do it that way, but then you might end up with an appeal, then you might end up having to pay your lawyer 2 or 3 times. You might be fighting for the rest of your life. That's not going to work either, unless you're pretty lucky. But we'll see what happens as we go down towards the first hearings in the Me Too series in the United States.
A writer's job is to rub up against the grain of conventional thinking and to make people think about things in different ways, sometimes in ways that make them feel uncomfortable or even offend them. You've always done that in your career. As a result, you're almost always finding yourself under attack. What effect does that have on you?
None. What effect would it have on me?
Well, I'm just wondering, is it wearing? Is it wearing to constantly find yourself the subject of controversy and criticism?
No, it isn't wearing. Look, I'm a teacher. The only thing I want people to do is to think. And if that means they disagree with me, fine. Then let's disagree. Let's tease it out. Let's try and work out what's going on here. What I find shocking is the sort of torpor of people who accept slogans that don't make any sense, like yes means yes. Yes might mean yes, but if you've changed your mind, it's not much help to you. It only means you only have the power of consent when you can escape from a situation. And in most situations women find themselves in, they can't escape, even if what I'm talking about is domestic life.
Do you think that in this age of social media and echo chambers that we have become less open to listening to the arguments of people we disagree with, or has it always been thus?
Look, I hope it has always been thus, really. But, you know, I am faced all the time with this belief that I'm not allowed to speak, that people are shutting me up. None of it is true. I've never been no platform. I've never been shut up. And the extraordinary thing is I talk to audiences of 400 and 500 people, and you may be amazed to learn that a lot of them are there because they agree with me. And they think that what's coming out from the pious media is the usual catchphrases, and it doesn't relate to their reality.
You point out that you've never been shut up. You've always been able to say, you know, what you think and write and speak and whatnot. How will you judge, you know, at the end of a very long and successful career when your public contribution is done, when you don't want to do it anymore?
Well, I'm 80 next birthday. When am I going to stop? Look, the most outrageous thing I've ever said about rapists, in view of the fact that we can't seem to get any kind of justice from them or about them, is that we should mark them. And the women have begun to speak out and got their institutions into big trouble because there is a law of libel, and people have lost their jobs and so on because they listed the media men. You'll remember maybe that. And I'm saying, okay, fine, but we need to warn each other. We know that we have repeat offenders. I reckon we tattoo them. We put an R on their left hand. And then if you're dating someone you don't know, you just check his left hand. And then I realised, of course, that given the way men are, they'd probably all be lining up to get R's on their left hand. There's no way we can win this one. We just have to keep fighting.
Germaine Greer, thank you very much for making time to speak to us this evening.
It's a pleasure.